on the court and be like, let's do it.
Good.
2 days is not much time to build a team, and that is exactly what makes this stretch in Miami so important for Team USA. When people look at the roster on paper, they immediately notice the star power and the big names that create excitement around the team. But having talented players on a roster and actually functioning as a connected team are two very different things. What this group still needs is rhythm together, the understanding that only develops when players learn each other's timing, tendencies, and instincts on the court. Before the team heads to San Juan, Puerto Rico for the FIBA Women's World Cup qualifying tournament beginning March 11th, that becomes the real task. Not headlines, not highlights, but chemistry. That part of basketball is often overlooked when the roster is full of elite talent, but even the best players in the world need time to adjust when they are suddenly placed in a new environment with teammates they do not play with every day. These players come from different teams, different systems, and different coaching philosophies. They have different habits, different pacing, and different ways of reading the game. Even when the skill level is extremely high, it still takes time for players to learn exactly where their teammates prefer the ball, when someone likes to cut toward the basket, when the floor should be spaced wider, and when to trust that someone will rotate behind them on defense. In a camp that only lasts a couple of days, every drill becomes more important because there is no luxury of slowly building chemistry over weeks. Everything has to happen faster. That is why Miami is less about spectacle and much more about synchronization. Behind the scenes, the coaching staff is focusing on the details that make a team actually function. They are tightening offensive sets, sharpening defensive rotations, and pushing communication so that the group can react faster once real games begin. Because once the tournament starts, there will be very little time to figure things out on the fly. Adjustments will have to happen in real time, and that is where preparation during camp becomes critical. Inside this bigger story about Team USA preparing for international competition, there is also another storyline drawing attention from fans and media, and that story revolves around Caitlin Clark. For Clark, this camp represents more than just another national team appearance. It marks her return to competitive basketball after an 8-month layoff caused by injuries, and that kind of absence changes the way people watch every move she makes on the floor. Fans are not only watching to see if she scores or makes impressive passes. They are watching how she moves, how quickly she reads the game again, and whether she looks comfortable returning to a high-level environment. That is exactly why the early practice clips from Miami quickly started circulating online. Even short moments from practice began attracting attention. A quick transition push, a clean pull-up jumper, or a sequence where Clark directed teammates and organized the offense. Those small glimpses were enough to spark conversation because people were searching for signs of confidence and rhythm. And the biggest takeaway from the early footage was simple. Caitlin Clark did not look hesitant. That detail matters more than it might seem, because when a player returns after a long break, the first thing that usually appears is rust. Timing feels slightly off, decisions become slower, and movements look cautious. But in the clips coming out of the first day, Clark looked active and confident. She stepped into drills with energy, moved the ball quickly, and showed no hesitation taking shots when the opportunity appeared. She looked comfortable being part of the natural flow of practice rather than slowly easing her way back into the action. For someone who has not played competitive basketball in 8 months, that is exactly the kind of signal fans hope to see, and it explains why the online reaction grew so quickly. When people see Clark sharing the floor with other major talents like Paige Buchers and Angel Reese, the conversation becomes bigger than any single player. Suddenly the question becomes what this team might look like once these players begin reading each other naturally instead of simply playing beside each other. Practice sessions offer the first preview of that possibility. They provide early hints of how different playing styles might blend together and how the team's overall rhythm might evolve once real competition begins. By the second day of camp, the overall energy usually changes. The first day tends to focus on re-entry, getting everyone moving again, shaking off travel fatigue, and reintroducing players to the structure of the team system. But by the second day, the intensity rises. The pace becomes faster. The drills become more competitive, and coaches begin placing players into situations that closely resemble real game scenarios. There is more full-court action, more 5-on-5 play, and more emphasis on communication during defensive switches and fast break transitions. These are the moments where habits start to show. Talent can carry a team through short bursts, but cohesion is what controls the chaotic possessions when plays break down and players must improvise together. Coaches pay close attention to who communicates on defense, who reacts quickly when the action changes unexpectedly, and who remains composed when the tempo suddenly increases. Leadership also becomes extremely important during these moments, which is where the presence of Breanna Stewart brings tremendous value to the group. Stewart joined the team during these sessions in Miami, and her influence extends far beyond the highlight moments fans usually see. On a roster that combines established veterans with younger rising stars, leadership often appears in subtle ways. It might be a quick comment between repetitions, a correction during a defensive drill, or simply the example of veteran sets by approaching every sequence with focus and intensity. Those small interactions quietly accelerate the learning process for the entire team. For players like Caitlin Clark, who are returning to high-level competition after time away, practicing alongside elite talent has another important effect. It sharpens instincts and forces quicker decisions, recreating the speed of real competition in a way that controlled workouts never can. That is the true purpose of camps like the one in Miami. They are not just about conditioning or reviewing plays. They are about rebuilding the rhythm of real basketball. Once the team boards the flight to Puerto Rico, the environment will change completely. Practice will turn into competition. Every possession will carry more pressure, and every defensive mistake will matter more. Team USA is not simply assembling talented individuals. They are trying to transform individual excellence into collective rhythm in a very short amount of time. The excitement surrounding this roster is understandable because the talent level is undeniable. But talent alone does not guarantee control on the court. Control comes from timing, trust, and understanding, and those qualities only develop through repetition. By the time the team leaves Miami, the goal is not perfection, but progress. Enough shared experience to step onto the court with confidence, enough communication to handle pressure when the pace increases, and enough trust to know that when one player takes a risk, another player will be in the right position to support it. Once the tournament begins, there will be no more preparation phase. Everything these players have built during camp will have to appear immediately in real competition. That is what makes this moment so compelling. Team USA is entering the tournament not as a finished product, but as a team that had to build quickly. Miami became the pressure point where talent had to transform into timing and big names had to become clearly defined roles. For Caitlin Clark, this camp represented more than a return. It was a test of presence, a moment to prove that after 8 months away she could step back onto the floor and still look like someone capable of influencing the game at the highest level. And from everything emerging out of Miami, that answer is beginning to take shape. Yet the larger story is still unfolding because the real potential of this roster will only reveal itself once the games begin, once the pressure increases, and once these talented players must respond together in real moments. That is when talent stops being a headline and begins becoming an identity.